What if I told you that before this video ends, you'll almost certainly remember a lie you told? Not a major crime, not a life-altering deception, just a small lie, a lie told to avoid conflict, a lie told to protect someone's feelings, a lie told to make yourself look a little better. The uncomfortable truth is that lying is one of the most universal human behaviors on Earth. Children do it, politicians do it, business leaders do it, friends do it, families do it, and yes, even people who believe they are completely honest do it. But here's the mystery. If honesty is considered a virtue, why is lying so natural? Why does the human brain repeatedly choose deception, even when we know it can damage trust? And perhaps the most disturbing question of all, are lies a flaw in human nature? Or are they actually a psychological survival tool? This is the story behind one of humanity's oldest behaviors. And by the end, you may see your own lies very differently. Imagine a child, 3 years old, standing beside a broken vase. The evidence is obvious. The vase is shattered. The child is the only person in the room. A parent asks, "Did you break it?" The child looks at the mess, looks at the parent, and says, "No, something remarkable has just happened." The child has crossed an invisible psychological threshold. To lie successfully, the brain must perform an extraordinary feat. It must understand two realities at the same time, the truth and what another person believes. Psychologists call this theory of mind, the ability to recognize that other people have thoughts, beliefs, and perspectives separate from our own. Without this ability, lying is impossible. Researchers have found that children usually begin telling intentional lies around ages 3 to 4. The moment isn't just about deception. It's about cognitive development. The child has discovered that reality exists in two places, the world itself and the minds of other people. And once humans realize they can influence what others believe, a powerful new behavior emerges. Deception, not because they are evil, but because they are human. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors lived in small tribes. Life was dangerous. Food was scarce. Social status determined survival. Being rejected by the group could mean death. Under those conditions, honesty wasn't always the safest strategy. Imagine a hunter returning empty-handed after a failed hunt. Admitting failure might lower his status. Exaggerating his efforts might preserve it. Imagine a tribe member trying to attract a mate. Displaying confidence, even if exaggerated, could improve reproductive success. Slowly, evolution rewarded not only intelligence, but social intelligence, the ability to influence perceptions, the ability to manage reputation, the ability to conceal weaknesses. From an evolutionary perspective, lying wasn't necessarily a defect. It was sometimes an advantage. This creates a fascinating psychological paradox. Humans evolved to detect lies, but they also evolved to tell them. It's an ancient arms race. Deceivers become more sophisticated. Observers become more skeptical. And the cycle continues. Even today, most lies aren't dramatic. They're ordinary, tiny, almost invisible. A co-worker asks, "Did you read the report?" "Yes, I'm almost done." You haven't started. A friend shows you a new haircut. It's great. You don't mean it. Someone asks, "How are you?" "Fine." You're struggling inside. Researchers often refer to these as everyday lies. And surprisingly, many of them aren't motivated by selfishness. They're motivated by social harmony. Humans are deeply social creatures. Our brains constantly monitor relationships. Conflict feels threatening. Rejection feels painful. Embarrassment feels dangerous. Sometimes a lie becomes the quickest path to emotional safety. The brain quietly performs a calculation. Will honesty create discomfort? Will deception create comfort? If the answer favors comfort, the temptation to lie increases, not because we're malicious, but because we're trying to navigate complex social environments. In many cases, lying functions as emotional self-defense. Now the story becomes even more fascinating. Neuroscientists have discovered that lying requires more mental effort than telling the truth. Truth is stored. A lie must be created, maintained, and defended. When someone lies, the brain often works harder. It must suppress reality. Construct an alternative story. Monitor the listener's reaction. And remember what was said. This cognitive burden explains why deception can be mentally exhausting. But here's where things get interesting. Repeated lying changes the experience. The first lie often produces discomfort, guilt, anxiety, stress. But over time, something happens. The emotional response weakens. The brain adapts. Psychologists call this desensitization. What once felt wrong begins to feel normal. Small lies become easier, then larger lies, then larger still. Many major scandals don't begin with enormous deceptions. They begin with tiny ones. A small lie that seemed harmless, a shortcut, a cover-up, a moment of self-protection. And then the person becomes trapped by their own story. One of the biggest misconceptions about deception is the belief that liars are bad people. Reality is much more complicated. Many lies are told by fundamentally decent individuals. Consider a student who cheats on an exam. The motivation may not be greed. It may be fear of failure, fear of disappointing parents, fear of losing opportunities. Or consider an employee who hides a mistake. Often the motivation isn't dishonesty itself. It's fear of consequences. Psychologists have consistently found that fear is one of the strongest drivers of deception. Fear of rejection, fear of punishment, fear of judgment, fear of losing status. The lie becomes a shield, a psychological defense mechanism. Ironically, many people lie because they desperately want to be seen as good, and that creates one of the most dangerous biases in human behavior: self-justification. People rarely think, "I'm lying because I'm dishonest." Instead, they think, "I'm protecting someone. I'm helping. I'm avoiding unnecessary problems. I'm doing what's best." The brain is remarkably skilled at turning self-interest into moral reasoning. There's one person we deceive more than anyone else: ourselves. Self-deception may be the most powerful psychological force in human behavior. Imagine someone convinced they're not jealous, not insecure, not afraid, not biased. Their conscious mind believes one story, but their actions reveal another. Psychologists have spent decades studying how humans distort reality to protect self-esteem. We ignore evidence, rationalize failures, rewrite memories, and exaggerate our virtues. Why? Because the truth can be painful. The human mind doesn't simply seek accuracy. It seeks emotional stability. Sometimes self-deception acts like psychological armor. It protects us from uncomfortable truths, but it can also prevent growth. After all, we cannot change what we refuse to see. For a moment, imagine a world where nobody trusted anyone. Every promise questioned, every relationship doubted, every conversation treated with suspicion. Society itself depends on trust. Trust is invisible, but it holds everything together. Friendships, families, businesses, governments, communities, and trust is fragile. A lie may provide short-term relief, but repeated deception creates long-term consequences. Relationships weaken, anxiety increases. The liar becomes trapped in maintenance mode, protecting stories, tracking contradictions, managing impressions. What began as freedom often becomes a prison. The very behavior designed to avoid pain creates more of it. Here's a surprising twist. Complete honesty isn't always ideal either. Imagine telling everyone every thought that enters your mind, every criticism, every frustration, every judgment. Social life would collapse. Psychologists have discovered that healthy relationships often require a balance between honesty and compassion. The challenge isn't simply telling the truth. It's telling the truth wisely. The goal is not brutal honesty. The goal is constructive honesty. Honesty that informs rather than wounds. Honesty that builds rather than destroys. This is where emotional intelligence becomes crucial. Knowing when to speak, how to speak, and why you're speaking. The story of lying is not really a story about dishonesty. It's a story about being human, about fear, belonging, status, protection, love, shame, and survival. From the child standing beside a broken vase, to the executive hiding a mistake, to the friend saying, "I'm okay," when they're not, the psychology remains surprisingly similar. Every lie reveals something deeper than deception itself. It reveals a need, a fear, a desire, a vulnerability. And perhaps that's the most important lesson. When we encounter a lie, the real question isn't always, why did this person deceive me? Sometimes the more revealing question is, what were they trying to protect? Because behind every lie lies a story, and behind every story, there is human behavior waiting to be understood. This has been Stories Behind Behavior. If this video made you reflect on the hidden motivations behind human actions, subscribe for more psychological documentaries, exploring the stories behind the choices people make every day. And remember, the next time you hear a lie, look beyond the words. The real story may be hiding underneath.